It's absolutely wonderfully amazing to be on the call with you once again. Once
My
again.
pleasure.
And yeah,
I'm sure you would
yeah.
have had to look
And
up some expletives, though. I'm sure you don't know any of those.
yeah, I do. There's this thing called BC. BC, before Christ.
Before
Before Christ. Yeah, there was this thing. And then there's a thing about, I can't forget to remember that I'm saved.
you mean the
Because
other life?
yeah. I mean, the reality is there are things that happens in our lives, and since you just took me there, Kathy, I'm going to go there. This wasn't the way I was about to go, but I'm going down this path. There's some things that happens in our lives that causes us, watch this, to forget who we are and lose sight of our true identity. There's experiences that we go through. And when we go through those experiences has the tendency to alter not only our view of life, but our view of ourselves. And when we begin to alter that view, literally what takes place is we begin to alter how we think. We alter what we say. We alter what we do. We alter how we live, and we ultimately alter who we truly are. Because our response was not to the foundational or the core of our identity, but our response was to something that happened. And oftentimes we experience this in the context of business. Business sometimes can get rough. Business can be inconsistent. Business can become frustrating. Business can, man, make you say if it's not one thing, it's another. And so sometimes we after going through it, sometimes going through it make us want to give up on it. Sometimes going through it makes us want to quit. And so when we look at this, how do we continue when we don't when we want to quit? How do we continue in business? How do I continue to call? How do I continue to text? How do I continue to show up? And it doesn't seem like, watch this now, the juice is worth the squeeze. It don't feel like the juice is worth the squeeze. The effort that it takes to get the juice out, is it really worth it? And the truth of the matter is only you can determine that. But you have to consider the perspective that you're looking through. If you consider the perspective based on the problem, then it's possible that you'll say this ain't worth it. Excuse my ebonical communication. If you view it from the perspective based on purpose, then purpose says no matter how difficult it is, I cannot quit. I had a situation last night. Life happens, and Coach Dan had a long day, and he was ready to retire at about 8:30. I shut my computer down. I said, I'm going to retire. I'm going to get into bed and do something dumb, and that's watch TV until I fall asleep. And as soon as that happened, I got a text from a mother who whose son that I mentored for many years. Now this young man now is in his 30s, and she said, "I need you to call this individual." When I called him, I hadn't spoken to him in about 2 or 3 years. But when I called and he heard my voice, he began to break. He began to cry. He began to yell out and scream and say, "Pastor, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to ruin my life, but I don't know what else to do." And he began to share. And basically, he has a stalker. He's a small business owner out of state. He's doing very, very well. He's in real estate. He's probably a millionaire at this point, 30-something years old. But he was ready to give up. He was ready to quit because he sold a seed that's coming back to haunt him. And as a result of that seed coming back to haunt him, she's vandalizing his car. Her brother broke into his business. All of these things are happening. And he's like, I can't take it. And he was really ready to go and harm her and subsequently himself. As we begin to talk about it, his cry moved from anger to fear. And the fear was the fear of changing. He said, I don't want to become this angry person. I don't want to become this bitter person. I don't want to give up on everything that I've built. How do I recover from this? And some of you today, you think you've suffered some things that will cause you to change. You suffered some things that will cause you to give up. And the question is, how do you recover? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. The first step to recovering is discovery. Y'all write that down. The first step of recovering is discovery. You got to discover a couple of things. You got to discover, how did you get here? You got to discover what you're going to do while you're here, and you got to discover where you're trying to go so you could get out of here. And when you discover that, it helps you to begin to understand adjustments that have to be made so what you're going through won't adjust you. You have to be the one responsible for the adjustment. You have to be the one responsible for the change. You can't respond to your process. You got to respond to your purpose. So now when we look at this thing, and I promise you I wasn't going here. This is all Kathy. So if y'all don't like this message today, blame her because she started it. But here's our reality. Our reality is this. If you don't do it, it won't get done. Well, what do you mean, Coach? If you don't do it, it won't get done. Whatever it is that you want to see happen in your life, if you don't take full responsibility for it happening, then guess what? It won't happen. If you leave the happenings of life to happenstance and chance, then there's a great chance what's happening, you're not going to want it. So you got to discover. You got to discover where you want to be by the end of this year. You got to discover it. I told you guys that Coach Dan was struggling, and I don't care talking to you about numbers. We business people, and we have numbers. I told you guys, I said that it's been a very difficult and trying month, but I told you I was going to continue, that the beginning of the year has been rough. And so I was talking to the missus, and I said, here's the reality. If I'm going to get more cash flow in, then what I got to do is I got to ask for more money. I said this month I got to ask for at least $250,000. If I don't ask for $250,000, and if I'm closing at a 40% closing ratio, or whatever the case may be, I can't bring in $100,000 if I don't ask for $250,000. And so I told my team, I said, hey, it's been rough. I've given more to the company than we've raised. I said, so we got to make some adjustments. But the adjustment had to start with me. And so guess what that adjustment meant? I had to, number one, set a goal of how much I was going to ask for. Number two, not only set the goal, because some of us are professional goal setters, but we're terrible when it comes to putting in the work to reach the goal. And so the reality is I can't just set the goal. I got to put in the work to reach the goal. So I said the goal was going to be $250,000. I was going to ask for $250,000 this month. And then I got on the trajectory. And I told the missus I wound up asking for $800,000 instead. Why? Because I was focused on doing the work to get the goal. Now, part of that work was believing that I could. Because some of us, if you don't really believe you can, you will say it, but you'll never pursue it. And if you say it and don't pursue it, then guess what? The atmosphere cannot align itself up properly to accommodate what you are believing for. See, I personally believe that when I believe it, then God is in agreement with it, especially if it's for the sake of fulfilling purpose. And he aligned the stars on my behalf. You start getting phone calls from people that you hadn't talked to in years. All of these things begin to happen. Why? Because you set a trajectory of belief in the atmosphere, in your head and in your heart, and now your hand has got to follow. So we set the goal, and instead of asking for 250, and the month is not even over yet, I asked for 800,000. And y'all can do the math, provided that I could close at my closing ratio, which is 40 to 50%. I'm saying to you today, how much are you asking for? Because some of us are not getting enough is because we're not asking for enough. How much are you working for? Some of us are not getting enough because we're not working hard enough to get it. We're not putting in the work. Now, in order for me to put in the work, I had to get rid of some disruptions and some distractions. And some of the disruptions and distractions was important. But I had to prioritize the important. Are y'all getting this? And so, as you move and get off this call this morning, I want you to discover what's necessary so you can recover what's needed. I want you to commit yourself to setting the goal, but not only setting the goal, but actually going after it to reach, doing the work to reach the goal. And it's at that level, like now I'm looking at the trajectory for the entire year. And while I was getting prepared this morning, I began to think, I said, okay, my monthly expenses, my base monthly expenses, my fixed cost is about $50,000. How much revenue, if I'm going to yield at a 30% profit, if I'm yielding a 30% profit on what I'm doing in my company, how much revenue do I need to make certain that I'm breaking even? See, and then once I understand what that revenue number is, I know what my break-even number is, but then I also know how much money I want to make as a goal. And so in order for me to get to that number, what is it that I'm going to have to do? This is how you have to do it. So guess what? As I close with you, this is not the time when things are tight for you to shrink back. This is the time for you to go big or go home. So coach, in the middle of a cash flow crunch, in the middle of accounts receivables going through the roof, the phones are not ringing. I not only go out and ask for a certain amount of money, but I also went out and hired 2 new full-time people. Wow, why would you do that? Because I'm preparing for the win. Here's the question. Are you preparing for the win? I'm not moving based on where I am. I'm moving based on where I want to be. And I'm setting myself up to be ready to handle it when I get there. Here's the question. How are you going to move? Are you going to move based on the pain of your past? Are you going to move based on the problem of your present? Or are you going to move based on the potential of your purpose? That's the decision. The pain of my past, the problem of my present, or the potential of my purpose. How are you going to move? Listen, that's my time, so I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy. I trust and pray that this was helpful for you today. I want you to have a supernaturally wonderful kind of day. Until next time, as always, prosper.
Wow. I love it. I love what you just did. And if I had any small, tiny, minuscule part in having you go in this direction, then I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Coach Dan. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Let me bring on Dr. Betty so Dr. Betty can share with us. Dr. Betty, if you don't mind unmuting, go ahead and share with us what we're going to be talking about tonight on your call.
Wow, 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 Dr. Dan. That was just what I needed, a shot in the
Me too.
arm and a kick in the behind.
Won't he do it?
Yes, sir. So anyway, tonight we're going to start talking about the liver, the almighty liver, and we're going to tie it in to one of our favorite topics of weight management and detoxification. So y'all come and bring your guests.
Awesome. Absolutely. Can't wait to hear that tonight, Dr. Betty. That's
All
going to be at
right.
7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you stay tuned for Rebounding with Dr. Roz, and we will see you on our next Diamond Factory. Have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday.